Thank you, Margaret, for having me down here, and good afternoon, councillors and mayors and ladies and gentlemen. I'll just give you a little background on the Hepburn Shire, but I won't be talking a lot about details of peak oil, and I won't talk a lot about the details of an energy descent action plan, but what I'll try and talk about is how we are moving in that direction. And when you're in local government, you just move slowly in directions, I've discovered. You don't feel the wind in your hair exactly. Hepburn Shire is north of the Great Dividing Range. It's about 1,500 square kilometres. We straddle a lot of the Wombat State Forest, which is about 50,000 hectares up there. We've got some excellent agricultural land. We've got a great range of those basaltic plains that cut across the Shire. We've got about 15,000 people in the Shire. Approximately, or it was about almost 10% of the Shire is engaged in agriculture, almost 10% in food and accommodation. Tourism is a very major driver in the Shire. We have a modest amount of manufacturing, and of course we were based largely on mining in the past. We still have the remnants of the gold mining industry from one side of the Shire to the other, which takes in the towns of Daylesford and Hepburn, Clunes, Creswick and Trentham these days. We also have part of the University of Melbourne that's located in the Shire. So it's a mixed Shire. We've agriculturally, and I'm a farmer, as you've just heard, an organic farmer, and I've got about 20 or so other colleagues up there who are organic farmers, and traditionally we've been a seed, grain, potato, sheep and cattle Shire. Now we see olives, grapes, berries and fruit, and a growing organic sector. In fact, the organic sector is much more diverse than the conventional sector, that's for sure. The Shire itself, since 1995, has been in existence. It was an amalgamation of a variety of shires, and we have 7 councillors. It's a very small council for the mainland. We're not as small as some of our Western Australian colleagues, but we're pretty tiny. We've got about a $23 million annual budget. We've got about 130 staff, almost 100 of whom are outdoors, so we haven't got a big administration structure. We always seem to be struggling financially, as many small shires do, with our vast infrastructure loads, and the future will obviously test us in that area. We do have a sustainability officer, however. When I came onto the council only 3 years ago, along with my colleagues, we set about putting our council plan into place, and we said a variety of things. We said, for example, that we wanted to find significant alternatives to the fast food sector because we had so many contract growers for the McCains, and we felt that we were very exposed, and that's proven to be true as contracts disappear on an almost weekly basis. We also said that we wanted to help promote organic agriculture, and we wanted to help promote local resources, local markets for agriculture, value adding and sustainable agriculture. That was a strong theme. We also said that we recognised peak oil in 2009. We said, combined with the peak oil issues of decreasing availability and increasing price and demand, we can expect a significant reduction in cheap and abundant oil-based energy, and resulting from greenhouse imperatives, a reduction in reliance on coal-based energy. And we went on from there to say that we would create eco-villages, sustainable agriculture, and that we would become a carbon negative organisation by June 2013, and a carbon negative community by 2025. Our officers said we should investigate that. We said we would like to do it, and we won out in the end. Whether we get there or not is another question, but it's important, I think, to say that the community in which we're located has been leading us in this direction. We've got some very important community players, and one of those we've just heard of, the Hepburn Wind Farm. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, they have 1,700 members now. They raised, I think, $13 million. The 2 turbines, which put out 12,000 odd megawatts per annum, were switched on last week. They've got an electric company that's distributing power from those turbines directly into the town of Daylesford, and they are capable of providing something like 2,300 homes with sustainable wind energy, and I'm told they believe that that's the equivalent of planting 18,000 trees. That's been a very significant player. We've got 14 land care groups in our small shire. Many of those have predated the land care movement and have been responsible for some very extensive revegetation works in the western part of our shire, which is part of the treeless basalt plains and which were denuded very much during the gold rushes. But one of the very important organisations that we've got is the Hepburn Relocalisation Network, and that's based with David Holmgren's extended group, and they have done a lot, I believe, to bring the council along with much of their thinking. And for example, they have, and this is really important, they've run a range of public events over the years which has, I believe, well and truly permeated the council oars and the council staff. They've brought Roberto Perez to Daylesford, I think it was about a year and a half ago, and we'd never seen a crowd in the Daylesford Town Hall until we had the AGM of the community wind farm. We'd never seen a crowd like that there. They brought recently Michael Reynolds, who's sometimes advertised as the garbage warrior, to town early this year, and as a consequence of his exposure to his technologies of building out of garbage, the council have now got an experimental garbage building project going at the tip, along with the community. We're fortunate that we have Shire, as they're known. That's the Sustainable Hepburn Association, who are very much involved with creating resilient communities, and along with the Relocalisation Network, have run a number of transition training events. Transition training events are run with some regularity within the Shire. We have an affinity, or we're members of what we call Central Highlands Agribusiness Forum, and they have a very strong focus on bioenergy and use of wood and other waste products for energy generation, and have put out some excellent audits of our capacity to do that sort of work. We've got a strong organic farming movement in the Shire, and we're very close to Castlemaine, which has got its own reputation with its Refit and Save program over the years. They've been well ahead of us on that, I believe. They've also brought, HRN brought to us a couple of times Peter Harper from the Centre for Alternative Technology in Wales, and so those sort of, that impetus and that momentum that the community provided, and they've had councillors come to their solstice dinners and various other events, I think was a really important piece of chemistry in the council's thinking about what peak oil and climate change were all about. And to that extent, we've also had the assistance of the Municipal Association of Victoria, who've got right behind the Transition Towns movement in Victoria. They provided funding to us to bring in Andrew Lucas from Geelong to do transition town training and peak oil training to the councillors and the staff, all in the same room. This hadn't happened really, to have that sort of consultancy with us all sitting together as equals around the table. We had 2 or 3 solid full-day events with Andrew Lucas, and I think at the end of those events there was no doubt amongst our collective minds of the gravity and the scale and the challenges of peak oil, but importantly what some of the responses might be. And I think at that point we began to see the Energy Descent Action Plan program as one of the logical sort of responses, if you like. And when we put together our Victorian Local Sustainability Accord, which is something that all Victorian councils put together, sitting right in there was the putting together an Energy Descent Action Plan. we hadn't been entirely without some action in that area. We'd worked on the ICLEA program for some years. We, I think, got to stage 4 in reaching the targets for reducing greenhouse emissions. And so we'd had a little bit of background, but under our Mayor Heather Mutimer, we came up with our local action plan for greenhouse gas in 2007. But this hadn't quite taken us to the area of the Energy Descent Action Plan. So I guess that was our largest. We appointed our EDAP committee about 12 months ago. It's our largest council committee. It's an advisory committee. It comprises 7 community members, 3 councillors and 3 staff, and they all, unlike the other committees, everyone sits there equally with an equal say, an equal vote. And but it hasn't been without difficulties either. We appointed people with expertise in what we believed were some of the key components of an Energy Descent Action Plan. For example, people with expertise in energy systems, alternative energy systems, people with expertise in agriculture, building, planning, tourism, etc. And then we sort of tread water for quite a while, I have to say, because whilst we had the people on the committee who were experts in the particular subfields, no one had ever done an Energy Descent Action Plan before. In fact, there was a little bit of a conflict there, really, because Energy Descent Action Plans typically flow from the community. And having it set up in council as a council structure was a bit of an anathema to some of the community members who I think possibly thought that council may have been trying to hijack the process. That soon disappeared, I think, when everyone realised we were on the same in the same boat. It's been a process, I think, where we have to separate the particular expertise of those players from the big Energy Descent Action Plan overview, none of whom have had any sort of involvement with that. So to that extent, Margaret saw the advertisement that was finally placed to bring in some external expertise. We certainly had studied every Energy Descent Action Plan that we'd seen on the internet. We'd looked across the country, we'd looked across the world to come up with what one was and how it worked. But in the end, we brought in David Holmgren and his associates, who are now in the very early stages of assisting us to do that plan. Although, as they say, it's more about that planning process rather than that plan. And I guess that that with that sort of momentum now, we hope that we can. I don't know whether we'll come up with a document so much. David tells us that's not what we want, but rather a process. And I think that with the things that we've been pursuing over the last 2 or 3 years, that it will all sort of mesh in to an Energy Descent Action Plan. We certainly don't want to have something sitting on the bench, sitting on the shelf, that we can wave around and say, hey, we've done this. That's not the intention. So as we go through the issues, though, energy decentralisation is clearly something of importance to us. Not only Hepburn Wind, but we've got other mechanisms, as I've mentioned. Bioenergy is one of those that we think that we can begin to use to generate electricity, but also to provide some of the heating that, and perversely almost, heated swimming pools actually have a small role to play here. We haven't got anywhere near the resources to put in any heated pools, but this could be one of the answers. Agriculture, because it's so important in our Shire, it's around about equal with tourism, I think is one that will get some special focus. It's because of the tourism in the Shire and the fine food and wine focus of the Shire, we've already got a significant amount of local production and a significant amount of organic production, and we can sell a lot of our products in town as a result of that. And of course, I think we heard it here before, agriculture is a very vulnerable part of the Shire's activities. Our contract growers have extremely high inputs that are necessary to grow their potatoes, incredible amounts of water, which has been a real community focus over the last few years. As we've all gone through restrictions in our water use, we still see water spurting all over the place, all over the roads, and at the same time people are restricted in their own households, and of course it's the fertilisers that are used. I mean, when you're growing some of these contracting potatoes, the need for nitrogen fertiliser is about as high as you can get, I think, in an agricultural system. And of course it's just natural gas, and we've discovered that with organic growing up there that we can grow all of those same products without the need for any of those synthetic nitrogen inputs, which I think is something about organic agriculture that's often overlooked. Apart from its pesticides and herbicides, it doesn't use natural gas as the foundation of its fertility. And I won't go into transport too much. We have much the same sort of issues that we heard about in the last presentation. Vast numbers of staff travelling back and forth between Ballarat. One of the reasons being that it's almost impossible to rent or buy a house in Daylesford because of the tourism pressure. The houses are half empty, but you can't buy or rent them because they're used for weekenders. We even have people travelling from Melbourne to Daylesford to go to work. I mean, it's plenty that go from Daylesford to Melbourne, but I hadn't realised there were so many that come the other way to work in Hepburn in the health and wellbeing sector over the weekend. Planning is an area that we're working on now. We're a bit overdue with some of our planning updates. We're working on our municipal strategic statement, and I hope that our EDAP will feed into that. But we've got we've got similar issues to what I heard this morning about this afternoon about regional Tasmania. Protecting high quality agricultural land is critical for us. We think that there are some ways, though, that we can, and I should say that the classic dilemma of urban sprawl versus infill is presented to us. One of the things that we will be doing is attempting to revitalise our small villages. Our smaller villages have fallen into relative disrepair. There's no longer a sufficient mass of population there to support any shops, or even our hotels have closed down over the last few years. And we believe that that's a middle road approach in many respects to the infill sprawl dilemma, is to revitalise those small communities through the planning scheme.
Build some schools in them.
Well, yeah, we don't do schools, but once we get the population there, and I think unlike Tasmania, we do keep our schools going even at very low numbers. I mean, 20, 25 kids in plenty of primary schools where I come from. And I think that the planning scheme is where the EDAP will hit the ground in many respects. And then we also, as I mentioned, have to deal with the big issue of tourism. Tourism is a two-edged sword. It brings a whole lot of money into the Shire, but it's a trickle down for some people. Others are more direct beneficiaries. And in the past, our tourism message has been decadence and pampering, and many of us believe that that's the wrong message for the tourist sector. We believe that tourism, what we should be showing off in tourism is our resilience, it is our sustainability, it's our superior planning, buildings, energy, water, agriculture. Those are the things that we think should become the focus of tourism. And then finally, I'm not sure how my time's going, finally we also have a regional planning process with which we are surrounded. And of course, as you heard, we have a very strong state planning process that we must mesh into, and it's not always a compatible one, I must say. The regional planning process has got some good points, but I think that it's important in your own regional planning development that you do plug the peak oil consideration into it. Because when I look at our regional planning scenario, it's still saying that we're going to have 2.5 times the amount of traffic on the road by 2020 than we have now. And, you know, many of us are saying, well, how can it be? And I'm sure that there are a whole lot of other issues within that regional planning that if peak oil had have been taken into consideration earlier in the piece, we might have seen quite a different document and quite considerable different outcomes. So that's our little process we've got going. I'm sorry I can't give you any more hard, up-to-date facts, but it's something that I believe the community has come on board with. Our council, I think, has commanded a great deal of respect, not just from those who were perhaps involved in that area right from the start, but from our farming community, from our depleted forestry community, from our tourist community, from our local businesses. I think they believe that we are heading in a direction that will serve them well into the future. I hope it does.
It's very interesting to hear about the sort of interactions and the sort of dance between the community and the council, and the one leading the other at different times. And I was encouraged to hear how important it has been for your process to have community groups organising speakers and being proactive, and that's actually fed and there's been an interaction in that way. That's really encouraging, and we look forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you.
What else would you like to hear? Any questions? Yeah.
I was just wondering, you said you've now appointed someone to go ahead developing your plan. Do you have a time frame? I mean, if you've got a deadline or something to it needs to be produced?
No, not really. It's probably moved a little bit more slowly than we had hoped. We thought that by bringing the experts in particular fields together and having all the literature in front of them, and that it would all move along more quickly, but there was a lot of faltering went on, because even within the environment community there was not the absolute grip of what an energy descent action plan might mean. And I think there's still probably some uncertainty there as to how it might pan out, what the product might be at the end of it. And so now that we've brought David and his associates in, I think that we can probably move ahead a little more quickly, but I would expect that it'll take us, you know, at least another year before we come up with some sort of solid product in terms of but on the other hand, I don't see the product being a single thing at the end. I think that as it goes along, it'll feed into the other processes that council are involved in, and there'll be feedback. So I sort of see it as, in a way, as a kind of a dialogue, rather than, you know, this thing at the end of it.
It's the learnings you develop through the process that's important.
Well, that's right. I think. I mean, we get a bit overdone with process sometimes at council, but it is important, and this process we hope's got some you know, some hard consumables that are coming out of it.
It's not top down.
I mean, you touched on this in terms of perhaps more sustainable tourism, but I'm just wondering, given that Hepburn Springs is getting a lot of recognition for doing a lot of really good things, you know, are you seeing people beyond Oil Tasmania coming to you and sort of wanting to know what you're doing, and, you know, essentially, you know, actively, I guess, is it acting as an attractor of good sustainable activities for your council and your Shire?
Well, I'm very pleased. I haven't been asked to do this before. Margaret's asked me to come down here, but I think that is part of what tourism could be, is to show, you know, a vast number of people perhaps how to live in the sort of in the way we're talking.
Lisa?
I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on scope. Like, do you feel like the level that you're doing energy transition action plan, being your small local shire, is a good, like, was that kind of the ideal level to be looking at it, or would it have been potentially more useful to have a larger scale?
I mean, I guess there's two levels, and we heard from Elliot, I think, about sort of two levels there. I mean, there's the organisation itself, and how the council organisation can prepare itself for energy descent, and then there's the greater community. I mean, I would hope that it'll start to go across our borders and our boundaries with our neighbouring shires, all of whom have expressed some level of interest. It is a big scope, though, for sure, and but we've got our sort of few eggs in the basket in the sense that we've got the organisation and the larger community to work on. So I think we can get some traction at the organisational level in the first instance.
You've got quite a large artistic community in your shire. Did they get involved in this whole process or processes? And was that helpful? Could it have been more?
I don't think quite so much. I mean, there's a lot of crossover in the community, if you like, in many respects. But you know, we've got a very multicultural community in a way, and it's not an ethnic multiculturalness, but I mean, you've had a you know, you got the old agricultural community, you got the forest community. Then we had a lot of refugees came up from Melbourne over the years and recolonised the place, and then we've got the big gay community, we've got the arts community. But I think that the permaculture is a very, very strong movement in the Hepburn Shire, and it takes sort of form of a lot of people with small urban establishments. In some of my sections of the Hepburn Shire, I think 10% of the people don't have motor cars, for example, in some subsections. And then that sort of morphed a bit with the organic community and the land care sustainable. And I think it's that organic land care permaculture consortium, if you like, that's probably had more effect on this development than the artistic community per se.
One more question. Peter?
David Holmgren's involvement, I presume, is the connection there to permaculture. I mean, the fact that he's getting involved in energy descent action plans would seem to me to be a bit of a departure from his career up until now, isn't that right?
Well, not really. He coined the phrase, I believe. He coined the phrase energy descent. So this is very much, I think, a sort of, I mean, the permaculture activities in many respects exemplify the sort of actions that you might take. And, you know, for example, the local community have, in the last few weeks, colonised a couple of significant council sites and set up community gardens on them, completely just did it. They said, no planning required, no permission required. They moved in, and the council has said, well, really, we couldn't do that ourselves. So we've signed a licence with them for these developments. And in many respects, it does illustrate, I think, how council lacks a lot of capacity compared to the community. And we're happy, I think, to see the community, you know, we're not saying that you go out and do everything. I don't think we want to set up a hunting in the middle of town. But when it comes to doing some of these things that are compatible with our council plan of reducing energy and producing more local food, if we see someone doing it, it appears now, myself and my colleagues in the council are saying, well, just do it, it's compatible, we'll tick it off. So permaculture is an important player.